Welcome everyone, and thanks for joining this session with Kapish and Apptio today. We're going to talk about the shift that organisations are grappling with. They're moving from simply spending on AI to running AI as a deliberate strategy. There's two frameworks we'll keep returning to in this conversation around FinOps and TBM, which bring financial transparency and accountability to the technology spend. By the end of this, you should have a practical way to answer questions that every CIO and CFO is asking. That's what is our AI actually costing us, and is it working? So here's how we're going to run the session. I'll start with a few introductions, a bit of a brief over Kapish and why we're partnering with IBM, Apptio and Cloudability on this topic. And then Jayshree, she'll be setting the scene, exploring why true cost of AI is often difficult to see and manage within an enterprise. From there, Matt will walk through the solution, a practical financial playbook for AI built on FinOps and TBM principles. We'll leave time for questions at the end before wrapping up with key takeaways and practical next steps. And the details of a special event-only offer for organisations looking to improve visibility and control over AI costs. Feel free to hold your questions for the Q&A session or drop them into the chat as we go. So I'm Craig Stanley. I head up the EA Alliances at Kapish. I work with organisations across Australia and New Zealand to help them improve technology, governance, optimise costs and realise greater value from investments. We're presenting this session together with IBM and Apptio because one of the biggest challenges organisations face with AI is understanding its true cost and value. AI is being adopted rapidly, but financial visibility, accountability, governance often struggle to keep pace. Kapish and IBM and Apptio bring together complementary capabilities in FinOps, TBM, technology value management, helping organisations move from simply spending on AI, managing AI as a strategic investment. So let me introduce Kapish. We're a business transformation consultancy that specialises in helping organisations govern technology, optimise costs, and realise measurable business value. Today, we're focused on the challenge many organisations are facing right now, how to bring greater visibility, accountability and control to AI spending. To do that, we combine three complementary disciplines: enterprise architecture, business process management, FinOps and TBM. The important thing is to understand that these aren't standalone services. They work together. Enterprise architecture provides visibility and governance. Process management connects technology and business outcomes. And FinOps and TBM provide the financial transparency and accountability needed to inform investment decisions. When these capabilities come together, organisations can move beyond simply adopting AI and start managing it as a strategic business investment. When organisations tackles just one of these practices on its own, value leaks. The spend can stay hidden and there's no clear accountability. Connecting them is what changes the outcome. Technology spend becomes transparent, accountable and tied directly back to business value. A quick word on who we work with. Kapish supports customers across a wide range of industries. On the public side, government agencies, councils, utilities, departments, and public universities are where accountability for spend is under real scrutiny. And on the private side, businesses, banks, energy, retail, and logistics, where competitive pressures are driving fast AI adoption. The drivers differ, but both groups keep landing on the same question. How do we get a clear line of sight over what technology is really costing us? And that's exactly the problem that Jayshree will pick up next. Now I'll hand to Jayshree to frame the situation. Jayshree brings decades of experience from inside large ERP and transformation programs, so she sees where cost actually hides. She'll set up the core problem before Matt walks us through the solution. Thanks, Jayshree.
Okay, thank you, Craig. If we move on to the next slide. I just say who I am and why this matters. So my name is Jayshree Ravi, and I'm an enterprise architect and an ERP advisor. I've spent over 35 years in IT, more than 20 of those in SAP and ERP transformation. Like I've done a lot of migrations across supply chain and manufacturing across many industries. What that means is that I can see costs not only what's on the outside, but more from the inside where it actually hides. So this includes AI, of course, in this day and age, along with other costs. So let me start us off with a very simple question. What does your AI actually cost? So the next slide. AI, as we have seen here, is everywhere in the enterprise. Every man and his dog is talking about AI. And it isn't arriving just through one door. It's embedded in your ERP. It's bundled in your SaaS subscriptions. It's spun up in your cloud services and built into internal projects, often all at once, so that it's so difficult to track it because it just gets adopted by various people. And that's just the start. So the next slide. The real cost of AI is actually underneath. Everyone focuses on the license, the model, and the token costs. That's just the visible bit. It's just the tip of the iceberg, but there are actually multiple layers underneath. The first layer is what it takes to build and run AI properly. And we are most familiar with that. So what that means is, apart from the model, getting your data into shape, and that's not a trivial task. Building and maintaining integrations, because it needs to integrate to your various systems. It could be ERP, it could be other applications, and redesigning your current processes so it works with AI to deliver value. Okay, so that's the most straightforward layer. The second layer, which is more hidden, is actually quieter and frankly more dangerous. So that's the quality and risk debt. So everyone is generating vibe code this day at speed. A lot of it enters your systems with limited peer review, weak error handling, and security gaps. And that debt doesn't show up on an invoice today, but you pay for it later in maintenance, in incidents, in rework. And as an architect, that's what worries me the most because no one's even budgeting for that. Okay, next slide. Okay, so let's try to dig a bit deeper into the costs involved. Like, what do CIOs and CFOs want to answer? What is the true cost of our AI investment? And is it working as intended? So I'm going to dig a bit deeper into the type of costs involved. Okay. So there is the direct costs, which, as we said, the software and platforms, which is all your either OpenAI or Claude or Gemini Copilot licenses, the development platforms, hosting the model, the databases, knowledge repositories, etc. So that's one of your direct costs. The other direct cost is infrastructure, cloud compute, GPU resources, storage, networking, monitoring, etc. Then, of course, there's the implementation services because you would need some external resources to implement it. So right from identifying your use case, solution design, architecture, reviews, security reviews, pilots, implementations, configuring the model. And then integration with your ERP systems like SAP or JD Edwards or Oracle, CRM, your document repositories, email, etc., other applications. And then there's a whole pile of indirect costs that is data preparation, like cleansing, maintenance, migration, etc., governance and risk, change management. You need to think about when to use AI, when not to trust it, what techniques do I use to prompt, how do I review my procedures, etc., and the new ways of working. Process redesign can be quite significant. So as an example, today a buyer might be manually reviewing their suppliers, but now AI is going to do it for them. An AP team will manually match and reconcile vendor invoices, but now AI is going to do it for them. A planner analyzes stock. Now AI does it for them. Okay, so there's a lot of process design and job and role design involved along with that. Then there's ongoing support. Models will require monitoring, refining, etc., etc. And sorry, all your knowledge bases will require updates. So that's just some examples. And when you need to, of course, measure the accuracy and see what risks emerge. Okay, so this is like, hope it has given you an insight into, what are the types of costs involved. So when we talk about true costs, is that what we have uncovered? Okay, moving on to the next slide. The answer to all of this and the handoff. So the good news is that we don't have to invent anything new. FinOps and TBM have been bringing discipline and visibility to this kind of complex technology spend for a number of years. The AI, the AI spread everywhere has just made them more urgent. So these tools give organizations the structure to govern the spend without slowing down the innovation that makes it worth doing. And that's exactly where Matt and the team at Kapish come in. They will show you what this looks like in practice. So fasten your seatbelts and stay tuned. So over to Matt and the Kapish team.
Thanks for that. And hello, everyone. Just to quickly introduce myself, my name is Matt Pinter. I'm the Apptio CTO across Asia Pacific. Been with Apptio for about 15 and a half years, so almost since the inception of the company, and I'm currently based out of Singapore. And look, in the next 15 to 20 minutes or so, I just want to expand on some of those ideas and talk a little bit again about the problem that we're seeing with AI and how it's being adopted across different organizations, but then also get into the solution and talk about a financial playbook that we see a lot of companies start to adopt when they look to implement some of these different AI platforms. And so if you move to the next slide, just to kick things off again, a little bit on the state of the market right now, AI has clearly become a top strategic priority. I think almost every company out there has some type of AI initiative, right? And if you start to look at a lot of what the different CEOs are saying, they're saying that AI is critical to the business. It changes core aspects. And in fact, a lot of them think that the industry that does that the best, or the organization that does AI the best, is going to have a clear competitive advantage. And you see this backed up, right? Facebook, for example, they're starting to metric and KPI their employees on how they're using AI. So it's clear that it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. However, if you move to the next slide, from a maturity standpoint in the market, it's still relatively early days. So this particular slide starts to look at where most organizations are at in their journey to AI. And what we're seeing is that a lot of them are really out of the ad hoc state, right? Where somebody in the org says, hey, we should do some AI stuff. And maybe they log on to ChatGPT, or they start to play with Bedrock or SageMaker, but they don't really have any kind of strategy. They don't have any type of plan. It's really just messing around. Those days are relatively over, right? What we're now in is that early phase of adoption, where organizations are starting to roll out a bit of an AI strategy. They're looking at some opportunistic areas where they could plug AI into their current way of working, and then start to make that a little bit more repeatable. So have some stuff that might sit in production, not necessarily things that are dealing with end customers, but at least from an internal standpoint, having some of those AI solutions in place. But where most organizations are not at, right, and where they might strive to get to, is at that fully mature stage, where now perhaps they've gone through a complete transformation. They've replaced multiple different processes with some type of agentic AI solution. They have AI platforms that are out talking to their customers and automating a lot of the tasks that they might be doing manually today. And again, this is where they might ultimately aspire to get to, but from a maturity standpoint, they're not quite there, right? There's still a bit of work that they have to do to ultimately move into that final stage of a maturity standpoint. And if you move to the next slide, one of the key areas that's not preventing this, but is causing some challenges with moving through that maturity curve is the financial component of it, right? And so this is highlighted by information from Gartner, where they're saying that just in 2025 alone, they expected AI costs to reach almost $650 billion globally. So it's a massive amount of spend that's being pushed into these different solutions. And that's only starting to compound as you start to see these different AI providers start to change their pricing model and move it much more towards a usage-based type of approach. And because of that, there's some extreme cost anxiety that a lot of technology organizations are starting to face, right? CIOs are saying that the AI cost is out of control. They need to start to pull some of that spend back. This is highlighted by Uber, for example. If you look at the press, they blew their AI budget in the first 4 or 5 months, right? So the yearly budget they had set for AI, they had exceeded it much faster than they thought. So there's extreme cost anxiety around this. And then finally, as they start to look at adopting some of these new solutions and looking at different ways they can expand on it, the funding that they have isn't necessarily net new funding, right? So approximately 40% of the spend that's going towards the AI initiatives is coming from their existing budgets. And this presents an additional challenge, right? If you look at what a lot of CIOs are trying to manage today, it's not only the AI piece, but it's also modernization efforts. It's also looking at rolling out new projects, addressing technical debt. And so trying to get that balance right and finding ways where you actually have inefficiencies within your BAU spend that you can pull out and use to drive these AI roadmaps is also something that they struggle with. And again, starts to slow down the maturity across those different items that we looked at earlier. And so if you move to the next slide to talk a little bit about why this is so difficult, and again, what drives a lot of those cost concerns, is that AI just isn't a line item, right? It's not as simple as a flat bill that you might get from a different provider. If you look at the bill itself, oftentimes there's a lot of different components to it. There's token usage that can start to drive the costing information. There's different types of pricing commitments that you could look at. They're even starting to roll out some type of committed use discount where you sign up to a certain amount of tokens and you get a discount for your usage. So just that first element can start to drive quite a bit of complexity. But then when you look at all the other areas that go into rolling out an AI solution, again, that complexity starts to compound. So there's certainly infrastructure cost that goes into it that can be difficult to identify. There's GPU instances that might sit in the cloud that have a very high cost associated with them. There could perhaps be servers in your own data center that are supporting these AI platforms. And then you could even take that one step further to start to look at things like the power consumption of those servers. That oftentimes is a significant cost driver of rolling out an AI platform. But then you can look at the different capabilities and enablement of those platforms. So this would get into the inferencing, the data network cost to start to move all that information around, perhaps the cost to start to clean this information up and get it into a workable format. And then finally, there's other spend and areas you need to address at, like labor, for example. And the labor cost is certainly an element that you need to track, but also, and again, this speaks to that whole movement through the maturity phase, you need to start to look at the skills and capabilities of the team that's supporting these different platforms. And because AI is still relatively new technology, it's difficult to find individuals that have the skill set to really manage these different solutions. And that's why you start to see some of the crazy salary amounts that some of these AI developers are getting. So again, as an internal organization, what you need to think about is what type of skills am I going to need throughout the next, say, 6 to 12 months, and where am I at from a current capacity standpoint? So you can then start to build that enablement plan to get your organization to skilled up and ready to manage and deliver these, or you can start to build that financial plan to go out and hire some of those different resources so that you've got that capability when you need it. So again, really the point of this is that AI is complex, right? There's a lot of moving parts to this. There's a lot of hidden costs. There's a lot of other areas you need to look at to be able to roll this out successfully. And so if you then move to the next slide, you then look at, okay, well, how do we do this, right? How do we look at making this successful? What does that playbook start to look like? What are the things that we need to keep in mind as we go through this journey on AI and look at different platforms or solutions that we might want to adopt? And so if you move to the next slide, what are the first things that you really need to get a hold of as an org is what is your AI ambition, right? And this is where you need to start to look at things like the costs, the complexity, the risk, because almost every org out there, I mean, they might say we want to have these fine-tuned LLMs, we want to have agentic AI that drives all these different processes and handles all these different manual tasks that we're doing today. But when you start to take that back a little bit and look at what it requires, they might not necessarily be ready for it, right? So this particular slide starts to speak through what that journey is. And you'll notice the x-axis and the y-axis, the more value that you look to get out of these, the more expensive it might be, the more complex it might be, and the more risk that you might be taking on from just a infosec standpoint. So starting to work this through and understand, are you more at the defend stage where you want to start to put some productivity assistance in place, maybe something like a Claude code or a solution that the end users use to refine documents or handle some of the tasks that they're doing today? Are you more in the extend stage, which is kind of that middle curve where now you're starting to look at perhaps pushing some of those solutions out to your customers and making them interact with some of the customers that would be accessing either your website or an area that you offer as a product? Or do you want to start to move finally into that end stage where now you've got these complex AI solutions that are handling multiple different steps and really eliminating a lot of manual tasks? This is really that first piece around just simply understanding what is the ambition of your AI strategy. Now, if you move to the next slide, from there, you start to roll out these different 5 steps. So these are the different things you want to think about as you go through selecting and developing that AI solution. And the first is pretty simple, but honestly, a lot of organizations miss it. And that's defining your AI use cases, looking at the outcome that you ultimately want that AI solution to drive. So you'd be surprised how many times organizations say, we need to start doing AI. And they go out and they start playing with different tools, running these different POCs, and they don't really have that end state in mind. So the most important thing before you start any move into AI is to be very firm on what outcome you're trying to deliver, right? What is the end state? If you could wave a magic wand and have this AI platform, what would it do? Okay. From there, you then look at establishing the architecture that you want to use for that AI platform. So this is where you can go out and start to evaluate different solution types. You could look at if you want to build something, if you want to buy something, if you want to partner with someone. This is also where you can get into that AI ambition piece that I spoke a little bit about earlier, where you can assess first off, what do you have the ability to deliver on right now, right? What data do you have in order? What kind of API strategy do you have to let all these different systems talk to each other? And then finally, from a risk standpoint, what is your organization willing to adopt? So that can help drive some of those architectural conversations, but really starting to look at your current landscape, evaluating where you're at from a readiness standpoint, and then selecting the architecture that fits on top of it and helps support that outcome that you're trying to drive is the next step when you get into rolling out one of these different AI solutions. From there, right, this is where you then start to do that cost modeling. So now you start to look at the potential cost of the solution. You can look at the license usage. You can start to fold in some of those additional components to understand what that means from a TCO standpoint. But this is, again, where you start to build those financial models to first off, get an idea of what that solution is going to cost from a baseline standpoint. And then as you start to roll it out to your organization or your end customers, what is that cost going to look like in the future? So as you start to see more and more usage of this particular platform, what is that going to do to your spend base? And do you have the ability to fund that going forward? Once you then move through this financial phase, this is now where you start to get into ultimately defining the success and creating those different AI value pillars. So again, thinking about the outcome in mind, now you want to start to look at a way that you can measure that outcome. And this is important when you start to look at communicating with the business or ultimately just trying to measure the success of the AI solution that you've implemented. And there's lots of different ways to do this. But what we see the most mature organizations doing is really looking at three different vectors. So there's certainly a cost vector, which would be what was the old cost of doing this and what is the new cost with the AI platform going live. Second is you want to look at some type of velocity metric. So if it's replacing a current manual process, you might want to fold in some type of consumption data. Could be number of units, could be number of transactions, but something that you can use to show, is this AI platform allowing us to do more and do more faster? And so when you then start to overlay those cost and velocity metrics, now you can start to arrive at that cost to serve or that unit economic view. And this allows you to help show the financial ROI, where if you've rolled out this platform, perhaps it's allowing you to process more transactions and you've lowered your unit cost by, say, 10 to 15% over the past 12 months. The third piece, which is also important, is some type of satisfaction score or an NPV score, because ultimately the idea behind rolling out AI is that you make people's lives easier. So you want to be able to capture that in some way. And this could be as simple as a voting question that comes up at the end of some type of interaction with an AI solution, but something that captures how happy are people with the AI platform that you've adopted. And so now you can see that unit cost ideally start to go down, but also track how happy people are with it. Because again, if people aren't happy with it and they don't get value out of it, then they're not going to continue to use it. So once this is done, and this you move into the final phase, and this is really where the AI solution has gone live, and you're starting to measure and track it over time. And again, this is also super critical because just because you roll out AI, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're done, right? Like you need to understand if people are happy using it and it's driving the right level of value. Are people getting good answers from it? Is the data that the AI solution sitting on top of accurate? Then is it giving good answers to your end customers? This is important to track and manage ongoing because you need to be able to course correct if things look a bit off. If again, and this is the point I highlighted earlier, if people are trying to use an AI platform and they're not happy with it and they're not getting good answers from it, they're going to stop using it. And so that ability to measure and track this over time and understand, hey, we're seeing an issue in this particular area. Let's dive into it. Let's refine the model. Let's clean that data up a little bit more. This is important to continue to ensure that it's driving value and that people are satisfied with the particular solution. So again, from a playbook, these are really the 5 steps that a lot of organizations look at adopting when they take that journey into utilizing AI. and again is critical to making sure that you're driving success and that the business ultimately is getting value out of those particular solutions. So if you move to the next slide, just to talk a little bit about Apptio, I did want to briefly touch on the organization that I work for and talk a little bit about how we're helping organizations move through that AI playbook and adopt some of those, help them move through rather those 5 different stages earlier. So if you move to the next slide, we have a solution in our platform that is designed to help look at those AI initiatives. And so maybe to back up a little bit, Apptio is a solution that helps organizations better understand what's driving their technology spend. So it effectively starts to become a subledger for the IT organization where they could look at the cost of their on-premise infrastructure, their cloud infrastructure. They could look at the cost of their different applications or services. They could take those costs and allocate them to the business. And because of the nature of this, we've recently done quite a bit of work in the AI space to develop a solution that first off starts to look at the cost of those different AI platforms that you're delivering today. And second, allows you to look at the value that it's driving to help measure the effectiveness of those solutions. So if you move to the next slide, when you then start to look at what that AI platform does, or that AI solution does, and the different capabilities and use cases that it starts to adopt, the first is that it provides end-to-end visibility around what's driving that AI spend. So we can absolutely take the licensing data in. We could look at the token usage, for example, but we can also start to factor in all of those additional spend elements. So because of the nature of what we do, we could factor in the infrastructure cost. We could factor in the labor cost. We could start to look at the cost of the inferencing that occurs. We can look at the network spend that's associated with it. We can factor in all of those different costs and start to understand what is the true TCO of this. And how that then starts to help is not only by looking at the spend of these different items, we can also track them through their life cycle. So one of the key challenges that you see in the AI space is that close to 80% of these AI solutions never make it out of POC. And so we can very clearly start to look at the cost of all these different AI solutions that you're POCing. We can start to look at the value that they might be starting to deliver and help track them as they move through the life cycle from POC all the way to production. From there, we can start to get into some of the usage insights, and this is where we're perhaps starting to drive some of those tokenomic use cases rather, where again we look at the token consumption, we can track that, we can understand the usage across all of the different business units, and this first off allows you to understand who's using it. So you get an idea of if there's areas that are using more of the AI solution or less, but then also it can help avoid some of that bill shock. You can identify, for example, if token usage spiked at a particular time and get visibility of that sooner rather than later so that you avoid that bill shock. If one area is doing something that's consuming a massive amount of tokens very, very fast, you get visibility into it and you can then start to act on it and become much more proactive to avoid some massive bill from an AI solution because someone is using the AI service incorrectly. From there, you start to get into some of the cultural changes that this platform can start to drive. And the first is around just ensuring that the AI solution is adopted and used responsibly. And this, again, gets into that whole tokenomic use case where if you track this on a monthly or a weekly basis and you understand how the tokens are being consumed, you can get an idea where you've got issues within your organization, where you've got people that maybe are utilizing way too many queries, they're querying the AI solution incorrectly, and they're burning through their token usage. You get an idea first off of where this is occurring, but then it allows you to start to perform some of that coaching or working with those offending teams so that you bring this AI usage in a little bit and ensure that it's being driven responsibly. And the second, or the final rather, is just around some of that cross-functional transparency. So this certainly aligns to some of the cost that we talked about earlier, but now you start to get into, again, some of those value metrics where it could be something very simple where if you've got a coding platform that you've rolled out to help developers write code faster, you can track things like the number of code releases that teams are able to push, or the number of defects that have escaped into production, to again get an idea of the value that it's starting to deliver. So from an Apptio platform, there's lots of different areas that we can start to address. There's that cost piece where, again, we look at the TCO, we then move into the usage, which again then starts to drive the cultural changes that we see organizations looking at adopting as they really start to mature into the AI space. So if we move to the next slide, those were really the areas that we wanted to cover. I know we've got a few more slides to go before we wrap things up, but just wanted to highlight that Apptio is happy to have a more detailed conversation with any of you today. I believe there's a QR code at the end that Craig's going to talk about that would allow us to just spend a bit more time with you, assess your AI ambition, and help you understand a little bit more about how we could fit that playbook into your particular organization. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. I really appreciate that that insight, that walkthrough there. So that brings us to the end of that walkthrough component. But I'd like to open it up for questions now. So we've got the Q&A facility in Teams. If people have got some questions around that, might bring Jayshree, and thank you for your talk through there as well, and Matt back onto the screen, and we'll see if we've got any questions coming in through the chat. I do have one that I'd probably like to kick off with Matt in the first instance, which is around sort of the getting started on this journey. So where organisations have got that sort of ad hoc, possibly moving into the more sort of structured, coordinated AI initiatives going on, what's the first thing they can do to start to look at tooling and services to support their organizations? Is it a pathway from cloudability with IBM and Apptio, or do we go straight into the TBM side of things?
I think when you start to talk about that initial assessment, that's a little bit more of a TBM type of use case, because certainly there's the different solutions that you might want to look at adopting. But what's important to consider also is, do you have the ability to adopt them and get value out of them? And this means looking at things like your technical debt, looking at the data platforms that you have, what's the state of that data, looking at perhaps some type of API strategy so that all this data can start to link together and be used by the AI platform. This is where TBM can start to help quite a bit, because we look at the overall landscape of your technology organization. We can identify where you've got large amounts of technical debt, or where you've got perhaps legacy platforms that might not have an MCP server or even an AI or API that you could look to get that data out of. And so TBM can help with that initial view around where you're at from just a modernization standpoint and what you've got the ability to drive from an AI solution day one, which then allows you to start to assess the different providers and get an idea of, okay, if we've got this outcome and we've got this state of readiness, here's the AI solutions that we feel we can adopt right away and get value from very, very quickly.
Yeah, that's
And
fantastic.
just to add to that, if you have an EA tool like LeanIX or Orbis or any architecture tool, that could feed into the TBM that Matt spoke about.
Yeah, thanks, Jayshree. And with your sort of experience there too, I'm wondering whether you've seen organisations with an outcomes. I know it's challenging for when the AI hype started to kick off, for organisations to be able to have a use case in mind. Are you seeing organisations do that more successfully now, actually driving the goals that they're seeking from an AI perspective?
Where I have dealt with SAP implementations, I find that, there's a lot of tools available in the market. Like you've got SAP's own tool, like Joule, you've got, Claude, you've got other tools. I think the first issue that people have is starting problems. Where do you start and what would be I think that business case part is the most where many people are still stumbling. And many organizations, larger organizations that I know about are not, they're just dipping their toes into it. They're not very serious about it because, especially when you have to access an ERP system, the indirect usage or API, like there are some restrictions depending on which ERP you've got and which tool you're using. So that is something that is at the top of people's minds, that I can say. So so many of them are still at the pilot stage or deciding what is the best use case for that.
Definitely. And I think that's one of the things is, we're all moving up that maturity journey as Matt sort of presented. And yeah, I think that really resonated with sort of that moving on from ad hoc, yes, but we aren't much further up the maturity journey at all. I'm not getting any questions through the chat at the moment, so I'd like to take a last sort of comment from each of you. Matt, what sort of thoughts do you want to leave the audience with before we move into closure?
Yeah, I guess the one thought that I'd leave everyone with is that when you start to look at rolling out AI, I think there's three different things you have to balance. And the first is around, first off, just assessing where you're at organizationally from a technology standpoint, kind of addressing some of those technical debts, making sure things are ready. The second is starting to think of it as future-proofing your environment, where you identify the things that need to be modernized. You look at the things that you've got the capacity to deliver on today. And the third is around selecting the AI platform that fits into the first two items immediately and can start to drive value fast. These are really the three vectors that I think are important to manage and to monitor when you do any type of AI platform to ultimately ensure its success.
Absolutely. And from your perspective, Jayshree, what would you like to leave the audience with?
Yeah, I would pretty much echo what Matt said, but just a bit further into the use case itself. Because a lot of people jump into, whether it's cloud and, what AI is now, where the cloud was about 10 years ago or whatever, where you jump into how do you measure the value you're going to get out of that? So spare some thought to how that is going to happen. Like, do you have current process metrics? It's not just for AI, even I would say an ERP implementation or whatever. Do you have your current process metrics and you want to say, okay, this is the throughput I'm getting, or this is the value I'm getting. This is the current measure before, and then, once you've got your AI in production, can you measure that and see, has it really contributed? I'm just expanding on what Matt said earlier, but, give some serious thought as to how you're going to measure that, because sometimes measuring that value is not easy.
It's like many things, isn't it? From an architectural perspective, is starting with the end in mind. What is the problem we're trying to solve, and
Exactly.
what steps should we take to get there? With for the audience to keep this conversation going, there's an email address on the screen there, ea@kapish.com.au. So if you've got questions that weren't presented here, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll respond to you individually on that. I want to say thanks again today for joining us with Jayshree and Matt Pinter, Jayshree Ravi and Matt Pinter, with their leadership and experiences in this topic. And I appreciate you sharing your insights. But before you go, one final offer that's worth highlighting. Our event special. This lets you get started with FinOps engagement, looking at a bit of a maturity and assessment piece in there as well. It's a low-risk way to put some of today's ideas into practice, to gain visibility, accountability, and control over your AI and technology costs. So this link in the QR code has some more details on how to get in touch and more information around Cloudability and Apptio. If you prefer the conversation about your specific environment, then just simply email the team, as I said, at ea@kapish.com.au, and we'll get you the right starting point. We'll work on what's the best fit for you. So finally, thank you once again to everyone for spending the time today. I hope you got something from it. Matt, Jayshree, thank you very much for your time and sharing your insights.